quote, hell no to Biden's request unless it includes meaningful border security policy changes. Senator Marshall joins me right now. Senator, thanks very much for being here. I so appreciate your leadership on all of this. We are getting mixed signals, and I want to get your take on what happens with the supplemental package this week. Do you have the votes in the Senate to move this forward?
We're going to vote it down, Maria. Absolutely. We're going to vote it down. This is going to go down unless there's significant border security changes there. And right now, we're not even close on that. There is no reason to even talk about Ukraine funding until we see meaningful border reform. I'm proud of our leadership. They're stepping up. They say we've got the votes. We're going to vote down cloture.
I mean, look, Senator, I don't understand why your colleagues won't move on policy changes at the border. Look at these numbers. This is a serious national security risk. We know that people are coming through the border who have been on terrorist watch lists. We know that there is an increasing number of Chinese nationals coming through the border. What are they doing? Are they being directed by Xi Jinping? And we know all about all of the drugs, the fentanyl, killing American citizens. So what do they say when you say we need policy change?
Well, look, again, your audience needs to realize Joe Biden wants this problem. He wants these 10 million people that have crossed the border illegally into this country. He thinks that that's the future of their party. So he's willing to sacrifice 300 Americans every day to fentanyl poisoning in order to build his future. I mean, just look at their actions. My gosh, with some simple policy changes, we could make the problem much better. If we would just change the asylum rules alone, we could stop up to 75% of the people crossing the border illegally. That alone, just waving your hand and changing the asylum processes would help the situation 75%.
It's so disturbing, Senator, truly. Now a group of 10 Senate Democrats are trying to squash any deal that includes any meaningful changes to border policy. California Senator Alex Padilla writing that the lawmakers are concerned about possible changes to the asylum law, claiming that the border cannot truly be secured unless we increase lawful pathways and legalize long-time undocumented immigrants. Then there's Florida Senator Rick Scott saying Schumer does not have the votes to pass the Biden request. Scott said that he's willing to provide Ukraine with funding as long as border crossings drop every month. That's not what we're seeing.
Right. So Maria, there's 4 pieces to this supplemental legislation that Joe Biden's trying to pass, as you described, Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, as well as border. We're no closer to solving that riddle today than we were on October the 7th. That's why we put Israel alone funding on the Senate floor, 2 weeks ago, and every Democrat senator voted against it. The exact bill that the House passed could have been on the president's desk before Thanksgiving. We need to take Israel out of the picture. We need to help them right now. This riddle that we're trying to solve at the southern border, there seems to be no give. Everybody's posturing. Everybody's negotiating through the press. But my #1 priority until Christmas is border, border, border.
Yeah, I know, but Senator, isn't it also the fault of some on your team as well? I mean, let's remember those 8 Republicans who stopped the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. So, I mean, we're all dumbfounded as to why those 8 Republicans moved that way. We spoke with Darrell Issa on this program the other day, and I asked him straight away, why did you vote no to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill? Here's Darrell Issa with me last week. Watch this.
I've said I'm willing to vote for impeachment, but I want to make sure that it's written properly and comes out prepared to not just pass the House, but to pass the House in a way in which we've at least got a shot to take it to the Senate and convince them to remove the secretary.
And do you think this would pass the Senate or no?
No, I don't think it would. It might convince the president to change his policy.
So there you go, Senator. You've got to explain this to me. Darrell Issa is talking about that bill not being written properly. So your colleagues are willing to allow a technicality to stop 8 million people. You just said 10 million people from coming across the border illegally?
Right. So I have 1.7 million reasons why we should impeach Secretary Mayorkas, and that's the 1.7 million gotaways. At the end of the day, that's what concerns me. How many of those people were terrorists? How many of them are aliens of interest? How many of them have committed crimes in this country before? That's the reason we need to do it. I want to remind you that way back in April, we introduced a resolution of no confidence in Secretary Mayorkas, and that went down on party lines on the Senate side. But trying to encourage our friends on the House side, look, I think that Speaker Johnson is doing a great job. I think he's locked in on this border. That's exactly what he told us in lunch. Border, border, border. He wanted to give us each a T-shirt that said border, border, border for us to stay locked in on. That being said, I'm all for them proceeding with an impeachment trial. But the ultimate impeachment, though, is a year from now. A year from now, people need to get out and vote.
Yeah.
And remember, those 10 million illegal aliens that have crossed our border, that's 10 million reasons you should vote against Joe Biden to be president again in November 2024.
I understand, but I don't know if we're going to, it'll be too late. I mean, a lot of people feel we're losing our country. The bill that Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene brought down, she withdrew her second resolution now to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. She withdrew it again. Just minutes before the vote yesterday, Greene said that Speaker Mike Johnson guaranteed that the conference will move forward with impeachment, but the articles will go through the Homeland Security Committee first. So is that the technicality that needs to happen here?
Well, listen, again, I think Speaker Johnson is locked in on the border, and I compliment him for staying locked in. I do think that we can walk and chew gum up here. I would have preferred this impeachment trial in the House started 6 months ago, a year ago. Why? And they have their own problems over there as well. I'm trying to take care of what we got going on in the Senate. We as Republican senators need to show leadership here and say locked in and say no negotiations on Ukraine, no negotiations on Taiwan, even Israel, which I fondly, fondly love and want to support. Until we secure the border, until I see meaningful policy as well as money for the wall, meaningful policy changes, then I'm not interested in talking about Ukraine or anything else. But this the security policy over on the other side, they can get started on this process for impeachment. I'll welcome it on the Senate side. We'll love to have that debate over here too.
All right, we'll be watching all of that. Senator, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Senator Roger